Good evening, all. Good evening, Secretary General Dr. Lele, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening, JK. You are waiting for National President. Good evening, Dr. Sanjeev Singh. Welcome.
Yes, good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening. We are just waiting for our National President, Dr. Jayalal, sir. Once he joins, we will start, sir.
Absolutely, no problem.
Good evening, Dr. Sharad Agrawal, sir.
Good evening, Dr. Mangesh.
Good evening. Hello.
मंगेश ते बोलले नंतर जॉईन होतं.
HSG Lele, sir, before National President join, can I request Dr. Jaya Krishna to throw some light on the biomedical waste, what we are fighting till he joins, so our members will know the details. JK?
Yes, sir.
Just enumerate all members, what all developments are happening at the national level as far as the biomedical. Dr. Sanjeev Singh, this is a very important issue. All healthcare establishments are fighting with this issue, and we are moving forward in the best interest of the healthcare establishments, doctors, as well as the righteousness, what shall be done. So till National President join, let us listen to the Dr. Jaya Krishna on this issue, sir.
Sure,
Please,
sir. Sure.
JK, please.
Yes, sir. There were certain issues related to hospital regarding biomedical waste management and pollution control laws. One of the important thing was the hospitals were categorized as industries, and all the pollution norms were in par with the industries. That was one of the basic issues. Indian Medical Association and HBI constantly liaisoned with Environmental Department and Pollution Control Board. And 3 months back, the Environment Department, Government of India, has categorized hospitals as non-industrial category. So the hospitals have been taken away from the industrial category. That is one of the great victory for Indian Medical Association. And second thing is that mandating sewage treatment plants for hospitals. As per the biomedical waste rules, President has already joined, sir. Mangesh, sir. You are mute.
Welcome, Mr. President, Dr. Jayalal, sir. Welcome, sir.
So I think Dr. Mangesh start with the presidential address.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Dr. Jayalal, sir, I'll request you to give presidential address.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mangesh and Dr. Sharath. It is nice to see Hospital Board of India is continuously doing this program of the professional development program. I'm extremely happy today. Also, very important topic you are going to discuss. I think this is one of the very important things which the hospitals needs: accreditation, support, hand-holding, and talking to them in all the important issues. Hospital board is rising to that occasion and doing this in a very, very committable way. I must thank the chairman and the secretary. Both of them are continuously organizing this program. I'm so thankful for the speaker for sparing the time and being with us in Indian Medical Association and helping our doctors to get the updated knowledge and inputs. Many issues are coming with the government, and in most of the time, and we are able to interact with the government and put our views. But partly they are taking it up, something they are not been supporting us. We had both the meeting with the biomedical waste. We had the National Health Mission, digital health mission is coming to hope. That is one of the big challenge in front of the hospitals, especially our rural and the single man clinics, which we need to do a lot of work on that. I'm so happy that Hospital Board of India is working on the membership drive. I must thank the chairman for having the membership drive, which he has started in Surat. The chairman for organizing a national conference of the Hospital Board of India. He has assured that Ghaziabad he is trying, or said Delhi he is trying. So I request once again in this official platform, both the chairman and the secretary, that we should have a Pakka hospital board meeting in which we should honor the hospitals which have done extremely good in the corona care or the COVID care, whether it is a corporate, single man clinic, or the 50-bedded hospital, and all are included in the Indian Medical Association. So we should not be able to differentiate a hospital, whether it is a corporate or single, but it's a doctor having the same problem. So that I appeal to both chairman and secretary, please work out a day in which that we will be able to have the Hospital Board of India National Conference, in which we are going to honor the multivarious doctors who has done yeoman service in the COVID, and also are going to make a resolutions or a Delhi declaration of the hospital board that what are the issues in front of it and what are the things which you are going to do. I literally congratulate our HSG, especially Dr. Jayesh Lile, for consistently making it available in their headquarters to have the continuous webinars and continuous program. And that is, it is sole commitment, his interest on the academic events. I'm so blessed to have such a HSG who is doing dedicatedly working to have academic fervent. It is being known in the Indian Medical Association. So thank you very much for this wonderful time. And I wish to hear the good news from the Hospital Board of India that it is being one of the sought after organization, professional organization. For any problem of the hospitals, they can be able to ring up to Sharath and Mangesh, and they will get a get a solution. So that should be the objective, aim, and the goal with which Hospital Board of India should grow. If any doctor has any problem, whether it is financial, management, administration, technical, or anything, and when they are calling either the chairman or the secretary, they should get the relief. So to that level, IMA hospital board should grow. I wish and hope that I will be able to see that before my presidentship is over. Thank you very much, Mangesh sir, Sharad, for the wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, President sir. I will request our Secretary General, Dr. Lele sir, for his some guidelines.
Yeah, thank you, Mangesh, respected National President, Dr. Jayalal sir, our Vice President, Dr. Harsh, Chairman, Dr. Sharad Agrawal, Mangesh Pate, and very active and supportive member, Dr. Jayakishan, and many other, I can see a lot of IMA members. And the topic itself chosen by Mangesh is so important and useful. And I'm very thankful to Sanjeev Singh to give it this time to know that basically every hospital, especially the ICCU or operation, post-operative management and infection control and antibiotic sensitivity forms a very, very tricky situations continuously. Continuous monitoring is required, and today's guidance will be definitely very important for all the hospital owners. And I'm sure such an day-to-day hospital problems are being tackled by the HBI very nicely and with a continuous advancement and knowledge enhancement. So I congratulate the entire team, Mangesh, Sharad, and I look forward to see what benefits we'll get from this important talk. Thank you, Mangesh. Over to you for starting the program.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Dr. Sharad Agrawal, kindly give us a permission to start this program.
Yeah, good evening to everyone. Respected National President Dr. Jayalal, HSG Dr. Lele, my dear Secretary HBI Dr. Mangesh, and all the senior leaders and my colleagues. I am very impressed at what our National President has given the task. He is a real taskmaster, and definitely it motivates us. Definitely, it's a good thing. I am saying it in a positive manner that he take care and he keep on motivating all the wings and the schemes that they should perform and they should do. And I like this, and it gives us boost, sir. It gives both of us boost, and that is why, because of your motivation, we are able to do this webinar every week. As far as I promise you for the national HBI conference, I'll definitely, I had word with the Delhi chapter also, and I'll discuss in detail with Dr. Mangesh, and definitely we'll try to have in your tenure. And even if your tenure, you are the leader of IMA, whether you are as a president or you are an immediate past president, it hardly matters. But yeah, I know you will, wherever you will think of the IMA, and we'll try to have before December. But if not, then definitely, but we positively try to have it before 26th December. Stewardship is a very important topic. Stewardship, lot of hospitals, as Dr. Lele said, that they are not understanding, they are not following the SOPs and the protocols of the antibiotics use, antifungal use, because without any protocol, just and whims and fancies, the three consultants are looking the hospital, the patient, and prescribing the 4 or 5 medications. There has to be some policy, there has to be some protocol for using more than 2 antibiotics. Then what are the reason of the using these antibiotics? There has to be some review meeting on that, because stewardship is killing thousands of people every year globally. And no wonder that if we continue with the same rate, if we keep on doing this practice, it will be in millions. So stewardship is not an Indian problem, it is a global problem. And we need to emphasize on this. We need to train our clinician. We need to sensitize the hospital and the hospital leadership, because to have a control on the consultants and the clinician, that how to control this stewardship. I was the part of ICMR team in 2015, and ICMR was working on stewardship, and I was the part of that as a senior vice president of AMRI Group, Calcutta. So I am absolutely excited that we have Dr. Sanjeev, the medical director of Amrit Group, and looking forward to have a good output of this sensitization. And I expect that all the clinicians and leaders joining this webinar they will definitely percolate this message to all their hospitals and the doctor, and they should be very conscious when prescribing the antibiotics. With these words, I welcome Dr. Sanjeev Singh, and I over the mic to our secretary, Dr. Mangesh, for the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharad. So friends, first of all, let me welcome Dr. Sanjeev Singh on this very prestigious platform of IMA Hospital Board of India. Friends, you all know after we do this primary thing, presidential address from Secretary General and Dr. Sharad Agrawal, we directly go to the speaker. But today, one additional thing is for all of you. I requested Dr. Sanjeev Singh for his biodata. And usually I try to prepare the shortest biodata possible to be presented before the onset of this webinar. But the biodata which Dr. Sanjeev Singh has said, I must read it completely for each one of you to know what a strong biodata is built by. So before going over to Dr. Sanjeev Singh, let me present you his biodata over here. Friends, Dr. Sanjeev Singh was a regional coordinator. Just give me 1 minute, please. Is this visible by everyone? Yeah.
Yes, visible.
Yeah. So Dr. Sanjeev Singh was a regional coordinator at WHO India in disease eradication program for 2000 to 2003. He joined as a faculty and a chief medical superintendent in 1350-bed University Teaching Super Specialty Hospital, Amrita Institute of Medical Sciences and Research Center at Kochi, and is now medical director at Amrita's Delhi NCR project at Faridabad, which is slated to be the largest private hospital in the country. He has done his fellowship in the patient healthcare, worker safety from University of Virginia, fellowship on health technology assessment from University of Adelaide. He is an improvement advisor at Institute of Healthcare Improvement, US. He is a faculty at IIM, Kolkata and Bangalore. Friends, as far as the fellowships and memberships are concerned, Dr. Sanjeev Singh is also ambassador from India to the Society of Healthcare Epidemiology of America. He has been adjudged as a healthcare quality control by Association of Professionals of Infection Control, United States. He is a lead international surveyor for International Society of Quality, ISQA. He was a member of the technical committee at the National Accreditation Board, NABH, and was responsible for drafting the standards for the 3rd and 4th edition. He was the vice chairman of the research committee at NABH. He is the chairman of the technical committee and scientific committee at AHPI. He is a member of a Drug Safety Council and member of a national advisory body for occupational exposure. He is also a member of Healthcare Committee at Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce, FICCI, and Secretary of AHPI, Delhi NCR. As far as the consultancy advisor is concerned, he is an external consultant at WHO on regulatory, licensing, policy issues, and quality interventions in India. He is a technical advisor to the several state government healthcare projects, e-learning, reduction of IMR, antibiotic stewardship, and etc. He is a technical advisor on infection prevention and antibiotic stewardship for the state of Kerala in India. He has written a book on the hospital infection control guidelines, principles, practices, and quality in healthcare. As far as research is concerned, he is running 14 international and national clinical researches. His research grant is around 9 CR. As far as publications are concerned, he has 105 international and national publications with H index of 30. The lines which are written in the red, friends, they are not from the biodata. This I tried to find out. The H index is an author level metric that measures both the productivity and citation impact of the publications. And let me be clear over here. 84% of the Nobel Prize winners in the physics, for example, had H index of at least 30, which already he has achieved. He is a journal editor for various journals. He has various awards. He has bagged various awards. He has been awarded best practices in infection control by Government of India and QCI. Quamco Quality Award for Lean Six Sigma implementation. Outstanding Healthcare Professional by ITP Publishing Dubai. FICCI Patient Safety Award British Medical Journal BMJ Award in South Asia for Infectious Disease Initiative. He was recently awarded as the most impactful 100 healthcare leaders global by CMA Asia. He was awarded Quality Champion Award by the Confederation of Accreditation Healthcare Organization CAHO in 2018. So various awards are there. Last but not least, the most inspiring healthcare leader of 2021 by Economic Times in 4th edition on Dr. Day. So friends, here I present to you Dr. Sanjeev Singh. Dr. Sanjeev Singh, over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. It is such a humbling exercise. I feel ashamed in front of all of you, all stalwarts who have done fantastic work and who are contributing so much to the society. I am possibly in front of all of you, I'm just a beginner, but very humbled with your presence in such a small presentation of mine. Thank you, Jayalal sir. Fantastic work you have done, you are doing. Thank you, Harsh sir, Sharad Agarwal ji, Jayesh Lele ji, and Dr. Mangesh. Dr. Mangesh, thank you for interaction and inviting. But I would like to pay my special courtesy to Dr. Jay Krishan, who has been one of my colleague at Kerala who have done fantastic work. I don't know how he gets the energy to do clinical IMA activities, and he is everywhere. He is everywhere traveling and is then contributing to the society. So thank you so much. I'll go straight to the talk of the day and would like to speed it up because would like to finish by the time given. The topic would be antimicrobial resistance and good antibiotic practices. Antibiotic stewardship is the word which Dr. Sharad used, but antibiotic stewardship is so difficult to understand. When we were, Dr. Jayakrishan and I have been working with the government of Kerala, and the health secretary, who was a doctor, who always used to say, you were using word antibiotic what? So that is why we thought that we should come up with a simpler word. So antibiotic stewardship is now also said as good antibiotic prescription practices. So it is easy to understand. That's my beautiful team, and that's the work which they do. And I just sort of just come and present. So there are always, whatever we do, when we land in the Mumbai airport, there is always two schools of thought. You see high rises, you also see Dharavi. Antimicrobial resistance and stewardship falls into that category. Half of the population says that we have already done that. I have an antibiogram, I have a policy, what's the big deal? And half of the population says that it is so big to handle, it cannot be done. We have just been going through this pandemic exercise, and we have seen this for so many decades, years. And recently it has been 2019 pandemic, but what next? And that's what is our preparation from IMA and HBI. And the next is, as Dr. Sharad Agarwal, Dr. Mangesh mentioned, is AMR. And it's going to be very tough. And if we don't pull up our socks, the high-end practices of hemat oncology and solid organ transplant program will close down in another 3 to 5 years. And if we don't pull up our socks, surgery will close down in another 15 to 20 years, because the threat towards the drug resistance is not a usual threat. It is pretty high. And this is the book which was written by Jim O'Neill, who is a member of parliament. But then he did fantastic work mentioning about antimicrobial resistance and what crisis we are going through. So what is going to happen is that AMR is just not, so it's called as microbial because it's just not about antibiotics. So we need to take care of antiviral, and so much so we have seen this in COVID times. We had from hydroxychloroquine to ivermectins to remdesivir. It has all been given to mild cases. The recommendation had been always for moderate to severe. So antimicrobial resistance is going to be an important topic because it's a public threat, and it is 10 million deaths have been counted. So we always were wondering about NCDs, about cancer, kidney failures, heart failures, or lung failures, but it is going to be AMR, where 10 million deaths are recorded. So what does that amount to? And again, the Jim O'Neill data of AMR impact on world GDP shows that it would be 100 trillion. So we may not be able to understand this, but that's the economic loss, which would be close to 3% of the world's GDP. And that is where, in short, if we say that our odds of surviving a minor injury could be just a debridement, or could be just a wound closure, would be 1 to 3. So out of 3 patients, 1 patient will succumb. And it is not something which is scarce, which has been created. It is published by N.D. Friedman. Friedman was the chief of CDC at Atlanta, who published this report in CMI, the negative impact of AMR. 1 out of 3 patients would succumb even to minor injuries, and the world in which a visit to the dentist could spell a disaster, and the world into which your great-grandmother was born, and the humanity will fight this resistance because it would be very, very difficult for our grandchildren. So how far are we racing towards that? Those numbers, I'll skip this because let's get into the topic, which everybody said that what do we learn? There is a focus because this is a slow motion tsunami, and Margaret Chen, the Director General at WHO, he said that we are coming to a pre-antibiotic and a post-antibiotic era where we had organisms and we didn't have wonder drugs. Antibiotic resistance, is it new? It isn't, and it was there earlier. But then, as we see, even for COVID, there are 1,252 multiple mutations and variants have occurred, and including what is there for antibiotics because of misuse and overuse. But though everybody knows this, but I would still like to bring this. It was a chance finding of this wonder drug through Alexander Fleming, who was given a Nobel Prize. So 1928, St. Mary's Hospital, London, where he just grew gram-positive staphylococci. He went on a vacation and realized that the cocci were dying because there was a fungus growth, and it was a chance finding. And then there was an invention of penicillin, which was a wonder drug, and there was a lot of surgical site infections and lobar pneumonia which got treated. But he did say the time may come when penicillin can be bought by anyone in the shop. Then there is a danger that the ignorant may easily underdose himself, and by exposing his microbes to non-lethal quantity of drug, make them resistant. He said that in 1940s, and see where are we in 2021? We are still doing the same mistake. And it's been a constant war. And you realize that as soon as the drug is released, there is resistance which has been identified. So much so that the drug 1996 levofloxacin released, in 1996 itself levofloxacin, our pneumococcus, the resistance got so the newer antibiotics doesn't even survive for 6 to 9 months. So how does this resistance happen? Because there is a normal way, there is an intrinsic and induced way of resistance happening, which could be because of an innate ability for a bacterial species to change the structure and the function. And we have seen this with COVID, so it's pretty understandable. The mechanism could be by the drug inactivation and drug efflux. So what happens is there could be a resistant gene, and this resistance gene through a plasmid gets transmitted. And this is a vertical gene transfer, and there could be an horizontal gene transfer. And that is how there's a mutation which happens in the resistance pattern which gets developed. But more than that, there are other mechanisms through which resistance also happens. It could be transformation, transduction, and conjugation. So what is that? So it is basically just like an amoeba, the structure of conjugation which happens where a resistant gene gets into another portion, and there is a transmission of this fragment. It could be transformation where the DNA fragment which are resistant enters into the cell structure, and gets part of the DNA, or it could be transduction, where from the infected bacteriophage, it gets infected and it forms a new bacteria and a new species. So that's the molecular mechanism, and that is what we need to sort of understand, that the structure changes, the efflux of antibiotics does take place, and it makes it ineffective. So what is happening because of that? There has been rise of superbugs. And we say superbugs because they are the strains of everything, the bacteria, viruses, fungi, where it gets resistant. So multi-drug resistance is said when it is resistant to at least 3 antibiotics. But superbugs are plenty in nature, and more so in our country. Carbapenem resistance, Acinetobacter, C. diff, it is emerging. Those who are able to diagnose C. diff is there. CREs are there, gonorrhea, VRE, Pseudomonas, drug-resistant Salmonella. So everything, bacteria, including Candida, is becoming a big problem in many of the critical care units, plus the parasites, which has been an age-old problem. So there is a list, priority list of pathogens which the WHO has prepared. And what is a problem in the country? In the country, it is about Acinetobacter and Klebsiella. It is about extended spectrum beta-lactamases. It is about E. coli and Klebsiella, which is basically resistance. And that is where WHO, including WHO India, have labeled this as extremely critical. So there are high and other medium antibiotic resistance pattern which is emerging. So what are the major contributors? It is about the poor quality. Definitely, there are not for standard drugs or spurious drugs, which India could be a fantastic market, and it is, because we realize that with many of the COVID drugs, which got its approval only in certain states, and rest of the states, you could not find those antiviral drugs. Availability over the counter, the misdiagnosis, antibiotic misuse, there's no data, and that's the best phenomena which the country could have. So what are the major driving force? It is about misuse. So whenever, and Dr. Jayakishan knows that we have been sort of working since 2013 with the government of Kerala, and whenever we used to go to the government, and they used to say, where is the data? How do we know that there is a problem? And then we did some of the work, but then there is misuse of antibiotics which is happening, and we need to own this, because we cannot just keep on saying it's about animal health and it's about environment, but human health, which forms a major portion, is our responsibility, and we need to be trained adequately about that. Definitely, there is an excessive use of antibiotics in animals, and it is used as growth promoters. And like in state of Kerala, colistin, which you may not get. The patient who is there in a critical care unit with multi-drug ESBLs may not get colistin, but you will get in a big can as an animal growth promoter. And fortunately, Animal Husbandry Department in the state of Kerala have banned it for last 3 years, and they have been monitoring it extensively. So there has been a significant result. So there, 80% of these antibiotics are basically in animal, which has been used. But it is there in environment, because there are lots of antibiotics which expires, and then they're just thrown. They are landfilled, or they are thrown in the water, and or there is the sewage which is not treated properly, and it goes. So CMC Vellore in close to 2007 have shown a lot of bugs, which multi-drug resistant bugs, which comes from all these waters. So it is there. Human behavior is a problem, because we generally take antibiotics for viral infections, diarrhea and vomiting, skin, soft tissue, and upper respiratory tract, which could definitely be avoided. And then there are infections. We are not sure. I was doing an assessment of a medical college of a hospital, and in the department of orthopedics, a long bone, which was intramedullary needling, which was done. Meropenem was the first drug, and I asked the professor why. He says that is what he has been given. Second drug was piperacillin tazobactam, and I asked why. He says he's not sure about the infection control practices in the OR and ICU, so he would like to pump with 2 gram negatives. And remember, what we need to give to this patient is a gram positive as a surgical antibiotic prophylaxis, because the surgery is less than 4 hours, a single dose. And what he gets is close to 10 days of meropenem and 10 days of piperacillin with almost same mechanism of action. So there is a lot of work which we sort of need to do. So it is like a city traffic where, however, wherever, whatever is happening, there is a lot of political will, there's no standardization, and we can keep blaming till the cows come home. And that is what we need not do. And that is what I think in state of Kerala, they pull up their socks and they got some action done. The resistance level, definitely, you all know that it is high, and there is Indian data which shows that NDM, we can keep blaming that why New Delhi name was there, but then there is a problem in India because there is no surveillance. What are the consequences? Everybody sort of knows that there is high morbidity, high mortality, and high cost of care because of antimicrobial resistance, and it's going to be very, very difficult to sort of, and you saw Jim O'Neill's report that it would be $100 million which would be spent, 3% of the world's GDP, including 110 millions of death by 2050. India definitely consumes much more, and we are not improving since 2000 to 2015, and it's to 2021. We are still the largest consumer. So what is happening in a day-to-day practice? So we would get a report like this in 2008, where there was some sensitivity, 2010, sensitivity colistin, 2012, it is like this, it's pan drug resistance. And it's not a joke. In many of the critical care units and many of the high dependency units, we would get a report like this. And this is definitely a very, very difficult scenario for clinicians to operate. So what has India done? India has done a lot of work, but then I think it's a very diverse country and we need to sort of work together. IMA and HBI is a fantastic platform where it could be brought in by a lot of collaborative manner. So there is a Delhi declaration which came in, and there is a national action plan which is built. National action plan which has been built to create awareness, knowledge, infection prevention, optimization, innovation, and there is a lot of repurposing of antibiotics which is happening, and azithromycin falls and doxycycline falls in that category. And then definitely we need to have strong leadership, and what a fantastic example what we saw today. So awareness and leadership is definitely a good example. Dr. Sharad did mention about ICMR, and INSAR and ICMR has developed a fantastic network, and they do have a lot of data available. Red Line campaign, which was one of the work which was done by Government of India, not very successful because still drug inspectors monitoring it over the counter is not being done. So what has states done so far? That's at the national level, that's a 35,000 feet level. But then what has state done? So we were asked from Government of Kerala to find out, is there a problem? So because there is no funding, there is no program, so why should the state invest time in this? So we went around the physicians in a state of Kerala, which is 98% literate and with very ethical and high standards of practice. 79% of the physicians considered this as a problem. 71% of the physicians, so we reached out to close to 1,500 physicians and 14 districts of Kerala. 71% they prescribe antimicrobial resistance on a daily basis. 65% of the physicians give antibiotic more than they are necessary, because this is what the physicians have said. 35% of the physicians don't know about the mechanism of action. So that's a pointer which we need to take. 32% of the physicians ask colleague whether is there a new antibiotic which has come in, and that is when they would like to change the antibiotic. And 52% of them prescribe because the patients are forcing. They don't want to lose their patients, but they are forced because antibiotics is still considered as wonder drug. So if there is slight fever, any loose motions, any respiratory infections, rhinitis, any skin soft tissue infections, which would be mostly viral in nature, what we generally treat is with the wonder drug. We also reached out to the microbiology, because if we don't know the bug, how do we give the drug? So 48% of the labs in Kerala, which is a very, very well-controlled diagnostic ecosystem, they were run by microbiology technicians who have no clue. And they were doing some of the identification of the species, which were through the disc, which were banned discs. and 72% of the labs give report of an unjustified combination. So there were close to 300 unjustified combinations, but still the reports were given, and that is where the patients and the clinicians would look for those antibiotic drugs. The CLSI guidelines was not adhered. Pharmacists, 100% of them not adherence to H and H1 drugs. They prescribe OTC and they give no feedback. So that is how we reached out to Government of Kerala, and we published, and Dr. Jayakrishan is part of this publication, which was done very recently in International Journal of Infectious Diseases. 2013, we reached out for a survey. We did reached out to the state government. We released the clinical guidelines of how to treat. And then there was a strategic action plan which was developed. And now we are doing training of the trainers and doing a lot of surveillance activity. So what is the bandwidth? So that's why IMA and HBI is a fantastic platform, because moment you get into AMR and good antibiotic practices, the bandwidth which you need to travel is immense. And it is, you just start digging work or start doing the work which would be very, very tough. So this is 35 medical colleges you need to reach out. You also need to reach out to all the 26 district hospitals just in one of the most smallest state of the country. You need to reach out to 18 taluk hospital, and we did in the state of Kerala, the 48 community health centers, 7,250 private hospitals, and 52,000 now physicians. So that is where you need to sort of have engagement and investment for AMR activity. So public-private partnership is important, and you need to work with the government because the scaling happens with them. You need to work with the professional societies, and we did with 18 associations of physicians, surgeons, ENT, dental, things like that. You need to train and give a clinical guidelines. And when we did that, we realized that we have done enough. And but we waited. There is nothing happened because there was a 2-letter word which is extremely important in government, which is called as government order. And then there was a government order which, after 8 months of our releasing of the clinical guidelines, which was released to all the hospitals, labs, and pharmacists to adhere to good antibiotic prescription practices. We also published the state of education and training in the country, and we realized that education and training with respect to antibiotic stewardship and infection control is pretty poor in public as well as private hospital, and that is where I think we need to, on a scale, one of the anesthetists said, on a scale to 0 and 10, when the 10 is appropriate antibiotic, we are at 2 to 3. And this may be true because this is a very well read, well published anesthetist within the country. And that is where, with human health, there was a release of strategic action plan. There was a curriculum change which happened in for undergraduate and house surgeons. There was an animal health program where where the chicken was given, which was free from antibiotics, and there was a geotagging of each chickens. There was an environment health, so unused antibiotic was collected in a green bag at most of the hospitals and IMA center. So that's covering animal health, environment health, and human health. And then the 7 states were covered. Their health secretaries was brought in with WHO, and they also now have participation. So there is a hand holding from the state of Kerala to other states. So what could be the strategy of good antibiotic prescription practices? So there are national guidance now which is available, and it is very, very disease specific and elaborate. So earlier 2001, which was very hurriedly published, which was not very good. But now the treatment guidelines, which is published by NCDC and which is also been followed by ICMR, is a very, very exhaustive guideline. So we can follow that. This is what we follow at our hospital: start smart and then focus. Because when we tell clinicians to pre-authorize or do this, do that, clinicians may not like it. So they need to start smart. How do they start smart? If there is an antibiogram, which is a site-specific antibiogram and also department-specific, they can choose smartly. So it's always difficult to tell them or cane them or whip them of doing this, doing that. So, and then, but then you need to focus. So you need to create a team who are passionate about antibiotic stewardship. You may not have, all of the institution may not have an ID physician, but that is where you need to sort of take that extra step. So what we need to monitor is just not about antibiotic policy, because whenever you go to the hospital, they say, oh, we have the document antibiotic policy and we are doing plenty of things, but that's not enough. So what we need to do is understand, is there a right drug which we have prescribed? Is there a right dose? Is there a right timing? Is there a right duration? And is this being given for each patient which is there? So what we need to stop wherever it is not required, switch from IV to oral, change to a narrow spectrum. Again, there is a concept of always giving broad spectrum antibiotic, and that is the disaster which we have done with the quinolones. And that is where we sit here with lots of ESBL. So that is targeted therapy would be very, very good rather than always being broad spectrum, and continue and review every 4 hours. So you could also use various mechanisms for timely and appropriate antibiotic utilization in acute setting by monitoring, by de-escalation and availability of those expertise which are there. You could also target it as community acquired infection, what we need to give in as per the antibiograms in your hospital, or it could be a clubbed hospital, because believe me, even in the country, our problem is more or less the same. So it is about Klebsiellas, and it is about Acinetobacter, and it is about Pseudomonas primarily, and then E. coli primarily. So it's not that we are dealing or we need to sort of hide our sensitivity patterns from other institutions. So healthcare associated infections and nosocomial, and you could divide that your antibiotic policy. If you don't have time and you could not do a continuous surveillance, point prevalence, do a point prevalence. Today at 8 a.m., I'm going to review the charts of all patients and understand the antibiotic prescription practice, and that's how British Society for Antimicrobial Chemotherapy does. So we need not do a continuous daily work. Antibiotic prescription pathway which is followed is we need to sort of look at a monitoring mechanism, which could be through a microbiologist, infectious disease, or internist who could help us along with the infection prevention committee. But this is core strategy. So either we have a prospective audit, or we look at de-escalation as soon as we understand. We need to dose optimize. We can immediately switch to oral. We need to educate, and the IMA and HBI is a fantastic platform. And then we could cycle between amikacin, nettlemycin, gentamicin, and look at what would be a disease profile pattern. So front end and back end. Front end, if it is very difficult to restrict because there are visiting consultants and it is difficult to keep telling them, you could do a back end strategy. So we did that, and the loading, we monitor loading dose, we monitor antibiotic dosing, we monitor duration of antibiotic. So now let's come to, can each institution play a role on good anti? So we saw a global phenomena, we saw what India has done, we saw what the state has done, and let's see whether institution also can play a role. So we have a multidisciplinary team. We don't have an ID physician, we have a fellow in ID physician, but within the team, we have a surgeon intensivist and a microbiologist, but all the activity is led by clinical pharmacists. Because believe me, this is the cheapest and the best resource for antibiotic stewardship, because what they know about antibiotics and the prescription practices is just phenomenal. So we need not always look for an ID physician. They are very, very good. So we do have a lot of multidisciplinary committees who monitors. We published this in Infectious Diseases Society for America, our antibiotic stewardship and its gains. We have a structure, process, and outcomes. So we put in a structure in all in blue. We monitor some of the processes like reserve antibiotic of colistin, polymyxin, tigecycline, and caspofungin, things like that. But we always look at some of our outcomes. So are we, is it mobile app? Is it monthly reduction of morbidity, mortality, length of stays, and cost of care? And that is where we do a monitoring mechanism. So what we need to do is look at appropriateness and rationality. And rationality again is 5 R's. So is the indication right? Is the drug dose right? Is the duration right? Is the frequency right? And is the timing right? And each year we have fortunately have been improving from 80 to 82% of authorization. What we also need to do is match up with healthcare associated infections, which are generally surgical site, ventilator associated events, and bloodstream and urinary tract infection. Urinary tract infection is a big problem in our country, and everybody is sort of facing a huge problem with refractory UTI. So mortality rates did reduce because of our good antibiotic prescription practices. Length of stays did reduce, so we gained close to 2 days of length of stay. The daily defined dose for many of the critical antibiotics did reduce just by monitoring it and having a multidisciplinary team and starting smart and then focusing. The impact had been phenomenal with colistin, with linezolid, because these are oral antibiotics. If Vanco is not given, linezolid is given again left, right, and center, but it is doing more harm because of its oral availability. Cost benefit, if you look at, we gained close to 2 crores and 35 lakhs, and based on our prescription practices and direct stay. So that is the contribution towards the societal benefit, because you are giving appropriate and warranted antibiotic use, and measure it with the healthcare associated infection process and outcomes. So you reduce your infection rate, your investment is close to $1, but what return of investment is phenomenal. It's $236, and that is where is a gain for all private institutions, because cost is definitely a deciding factor, both for the patients as for and for the management. What we also need to look at is the behavioral change, because just training is not going to help. But what is important is change the behavior, and there are very many tools. De-escalation is again a good antibiotic prescription practices. As soon as you get the result from a microbiology, if there are a lesser spectrum antibiotic which is available, which should be done. From PKPD is also important. Generally, we don't give a loading dose, and we just would like to give a 3 million dose for colistin and go ahead with it. So that is where we develop a lot of resistance, because it is inappropriate dosing and compliance would not be appropriate. So we need to understand which are time specific and disease specific or duration specific antibiotics. Like aminoglycosides needs to be given in an OD fashion, and generally it is prescribed as TDS, which may not be appropriate. Now, it is always advisable, if you have, even if it is an outsourced microbiology, doing a diagnostic stewardship, sending an appropriate sample, because we generally understand that the bug would be Haemophilus influenzae, which may not be. All India Institute has recently published, and the bugs are very different in, and this was a Lancet ID publication. So give an appropriate sample both for urine, blood, as well as for surgical site, so that you identify the bug to give the appropriate drug. So mandate 2 culture bottles, so that you are not treating contaminant, but you are treating infections which gets isolated. So diagnostic stewardship and giving the right sample is also extremely important. Wherever it is difficult, like tigecycline, vancomycins, and colistins, if you could do a therapeutic drug monitoring, it's a tough process, but then it would be extremely useful. Loading dose is critical, and the nurses should be just empowered. We have trained our resident medical officers. We have 800 doctors within our campus. It's so difficult to train them, but we have empowered our nurses. Whenever meropenem is prescribed or colistin is prescribed, give a loading dose, even if doctors have mentioned about 3 million dosing. The stability protocol of dilution of these antibiotics is again for its preservation, and its action is extremely important. What is also important is Candida is becoming a big bug and as a super bug. So appropriate antifungal removal of source control and looking at the foci of infection is also critical. and implementation of those checklists are important. We have now seen a colistin and a new antibiotic, ceftazidime and avibactam, which is being used when we find a difficult situation. Pre-authorization of such drugs with the committee, if you don't have an infectious disease, between a microbiologist and internist would be important and a good practice. Meropenem, because India is flooded with ESBLs and that becomes the first drug, but de-escalate as soon as it is not required, because unfortunately there's a lot of investment which the patient has to pay if it is irrational. And then BLI, there are many criteria. I can share this presentation with the team and it could be sort of also applied for its appropriate use. Just antibiotic may not help. A good anti-tubercular stewardship and an antifungal stewardship would be extremely critical. So this is the chart which we use, and this is what we ask our doctors to write. Whenever they write an antibiotic, it cannot be query sepsis or query fever. It has to be an indication. There has to be a duration. There has to be a reserve antibiotic requiring loading dose like polymyxin, tigecycline, teicoplanin, anidulafungin, caspofungin, voriconazole. All of it requires a loading dose. And then you empower your staff to do that. Surgical antibiotic prophylaxis, again, extremely important. Less than 4 hours, single dose, more than 4 hours, 3 dose, period. And it should not be continued till the lines and drains are there. CRE, the time is short, so I'll skip this. We have looked at the clinical failure. Now we monitor each patient with a day 1 to day 129. Where do we give antibiotic? How we, so just to sort of understand and come back whether it was appropriate and not appropriate. This is the tool which we are using to understand the behavioral pattern, and we realize that we are still very hierarchical in our nature. The head of department takes the round. Most of the information comes from the surgical resident or carer, and rest of the team does not participate. But they don't discuss antibiotics and infection control practices during the round. This was cardiovascular thoracic. This is gastrosurgeon. We say that it is a patient-centric hospital, but it is more of a carer-centric hospital. The antibiotic and infection prevention is rarely discussed during the rounds. And this is we shadow the doctors and we bring this diagram back to them and say that this is how you have behaved, basically to bring behavioral change. I would like to really put it has been an honor working with Dr. Jayakrishnan, and he has driven a lot of work on antibiotic stewardship through IMA. We created a champions of 122 trainers and releasing it into 14 districts. So to sum up, there has to be a comprehensive coverage. There needs to be prevention, but there needs to be training, communication, behavioral change. It will have to be a collaborative process. Sometimes it has to be inside the box, sometimes outside the box phenomena. But what is also important is the forum like HBI and IMA, who should play a bigger role. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. And it was a pleasure today to be amongst all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sanjeev Singh. It was a really very strong speech by you, just like your curriculum vitae. And the message which you have given, though it is scary, it is very important. Antibiotic response, antimicrobial resistance is definitely a slow tsunami. And you also mentioned that if at all the pandemic of AMR is there, it will be the worst situation than what we are going through today. Definitely. I request if anyone wants to ask any questions over here. There was one question from Dr. Yogesh Chaudhary, sir. Do generic medicines have high chances of AMR versus the branded medicines, especially all antimicrobials? This is the question, sir.
So very good question. I think every clinician asks the same question, but we have a College of Pharmacy and we do therapeutic drug monitoring and also the quality testing And we have realized that the good company generic medicine is as good as a branded. So I think it is about rational use, about appropriate use, about warranted use, and the generic medicines, it is not for standard quality or spurious drug. So it is, but you may not be able to match what is the original molecule. So if AstraZeneca came up with meropenem, those would be definitely class apart. But I don't think we should go with an idea, because we have tested this. Every critical care department used to tell us the same thing. So we tested this in our pharmacy college as a PhD project, as for 2 PhDs, and be confident it does not lead to more EMR.
Can I ask, first
think
of
there
all,
is
I
a-
congratulate Dr. Sanjeev Singh for the great presentation. And it was a strong and scary message that you have given. We all have to work to end this malady. The situation is that in general, in daily clinical practice, especially intensive care units, post-operative infections, etc., whenever an infection comes, the clinicians become scary, and they are usually prompted to prescribe the highest antibiotic possible. Their intention is to save the patient and save themselves. So in such a situation, in the intensive care unit, where a potentially savable patient suddenly deteriorates, and there is evidence of infection, and always the clinician will be afraid that in the wait for microbiology reports and all, by that time the patient may deteriorate. So what is the solution in such a situation?
Sir, please unmute yourself, sir.
Yes.
Very, very relevant question, Dr. Jayakishan. It is so difficult to basically understand this. I'm unable to share. I wanted to just show you one particular slide, because this happens almost every time. And what we need to do is to give that kind of a confidence to the surgical team, because their surgery and their this basically depends on. So this is, now I am sharing something. Oh God, I'm sharing something which is very from my institution. So there was a cardiovascular thoracic surgeon who used to say that he gives for prophylaxis. He was giving meropenem, amikacin, linezolid, and he used to say that because every patient, because the success depends upon recovery, and if anything happens, he used to pump in antibiotic. He's already pumped in. There is no infection here. For prophylaxis, he used to pump all this. So gram negative covered, gram positive covered. This was a surgical site infection. Fortunately, he left. And then there was another younger group of doctor who came in, and we worked with him. He used cefuroxime as per the indication. His surgical site infections have been lower. So this is a misnomer. I don't know whether Dr. Jayakishan, I'm able to communicate. I know it is difficult because that's an immediate reaction. But I think as a team, we need to support the surgeons. The intensivist should come forward. The ID physician should also, microbiologist should start rounding the patients and give that confidence that if anything happens, then we could pump in, but let's withhold.
Dr. Emin Menon, sir, you want to ask some question, you raised hand. Please unmute yourself. Yeah.
Sir.
Dr. Mangesh.
Yes, Dr.
Yes, I just want to comment on what Dr. Jayakishan asked the question. See, this is the common problem why the stewardship is increasing. And that is why it is necessary and very important to sensitize the doctor's clinician. This is the most common cause from the clinical side and the hospital practice. Then the stewardship antimicrobial resistance is increasing. So as Dr. Sanjeev rightly suggested, that it is the hospital leadership, when I initiate this talk, before introducing, I said that it is the hospital leadership which has to pitch in this, and they have to give the confidence, because in the hospital, where the good hospital, there is a hospital infection control committee. They are presenting every month, they are presenting the antibiogram, they are presenting the status of their infection, their culture report. It gives the confidence to the surgeon as well as the critical care team also. Yes, they need not to go of heavy antibiotic. There has to be policy for using the more than 2 antibiotic. If you are using, then you have to justify. It should not be like, as Dr. Sanjeev said, that people are using 2 higher antibiotic gram negative while the requirement is gram. So that is the role of the leadership in the hospital. So they should sensitize the clinicians. No, you should have a rationale of using the antibiotic. Why you are using the 3 antibiotic? Why you are using the same group 2 antibiotic? So that is how it can reduce. That is what Dr. Sanjeev Singh and all the medical thinker, they are working. ICMR is working to sensitize the clinician. That is the biggest problem, that clinicians think like this.
Thank you, Dr. Sharad. Dr. Menon, please.
Yeah, good evening, Dr. Mangesh, Dr. Jayagishan, all leaders, Dr. Sanjeev Singh. I recall that in 2018, we had been together, Sanjeev Singh, Jayagishan.
Thank you so much for your support, sir.
State Vice President, when we had the antibiotic stewardship workshops in Alva and Kochi. That was the last group photo you have shown in your presentation. And I am very happy that Sanjeev Singh is the right authority on antibiotic stewardship in the whole India, if I can say. What I want to, I am not asking questions, but I want to suggest is that the presentations like this may not be enough, that we should have more workshops at state level and district level and branch levels, which will help the experts and doctors to focus on the antibiotic policies. Because even now, I think many hospitals have got different antibiotic policies when a same disease is concerned. And that has to be put under control by at least by IMA leadership. That is one thing. So there are real experts even now treating UTI with the norfloxacin. I have seen it. The relevance of norfloxacin is gone. So the antibiotic policy, the antibiotic stewardship, everything has to be once again reinculcated into every expert all throughout the country, and IMA has this system to deliver the goods. That is what I feel. Thank you, Sanjeev Singh, Jayagishan sir, Mangesh sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Menon. Dr. Sanjeev Singh, there are 2 questions over here. The first one is, polypharmacy is one of the reasons for AMR. Is it need for antibiotic audit? Is there need for antibiotic audit periodically?
Yeah, absolutely. I think very relevant question. It is very important to be targeted and as far as possible monotherapy. In Surviving Sepsis campaign says polypharmacy 2 antibiotics is required only in case of Pseudomonas and multi-drug resistant Pseudomonas. So other than that, it may not be required. So it could be mostly monotherapy. And the next question is about sending swabs from OT and ICU.
Yeah.
It basically has no much relevance because it is only about the cleaning protocol. So if you have a good cleaning protocol in OT and ICU, which could be intermediate level disinfection or high level disinfection, that is good enough. And because if you send a sample from here and send grow Klebsiella, you again are going to do a good housekeeping. And then again, you take a sample from the same side, it may not grow anything. It doesn't mean much. So, but unfortunately, what happens is microbiologists keeps adding up this register, and they are very attached to this register where the floors have grown Acinetobacter and Klebsiellas. But I think what we need to do is good antibiotic prescription practice. It is recommended only during outbreak.
Okay. Dr. Jyoti Chitgupkar has raised the hand. Kindly unmute yourself. Dr. Jyoti.
Sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mangesh sir, Dr. Singh sir. Good evening, sir. I am a microbiologist. I'm always concerned and worried about 2 things. One is about the huge use of antimicrobials in animal husbandries, which is always a matter of concern for AMR in human beings, how to control it. And secondly, company-driven use of antimicrobials in singly driven or single doctor-driven hospitals or clinics. How to control these things?
So both very, very relevant question, madam. I think we have suffered this in state of Kerala. The growth feed or animal feed, unfortunately, doesn't fall into any ministry. It doesn't fall into human health. It doesn't fall into animal husbandry also. We had to work for almost 1.5 years to get this into animal husbandry and then ban colistin. So it's a tough ask, but then there has to be a lot of participation. It has to be a collaborative approach. And it led to the geotagging and now antibiotic-free chicken in Kerala. And I'm sure my Kerala colleagues would agree to this. The second question about the marketing or a medical representative-driven single center. I think what we need to do is, unfortunately, post MBBS, post MD, post DM, there is no renewal of the licensing in our country. That's one. So there is no education and training, except for, I think, in Delhi and state of Maharashtra, where medical council after 5 years have made it mandatory. That's one. Second is, unfortunately, in India, there is no monitoring mechanism also. So if anybody does or work in a particular fashion, there is no body which monitors in India. Whereas in US, there is a Center for Medicare and Medicaid because they will not pay. In the NHS, there is National Institute of Clinical Excellence, which monitors. So I think we need to create some monitoring mechanism so that we also have a rational system.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Sir, what question is there in the chat box? Most of Klebsiella coming only sensitive to colistin. Can we add this with meropenem or imipenem, even if it is resistant to carbapenem, as colistin not work as a monotherapy?
So a very good question. And there is, this was being thought in 2018 and 19 that it would be a synergistic effect. So colistin also always have to be given with either rifampicin or with carbapenem. But there has been a Merino trial, and it says that it could be given as a single therapy. And unfortunately, I could not show you my CRE slide, which was again in a multi-centric slide, multi-centric work with carbapenem resistant Enterococcus, where we have shown that monotherapy and polytherapy works almost, the clinical cure and clinical failure is similar. So it need not be synergistic. Merino trials proves it.
Okay. Any other questions, friends? Okay. Sir, before going to our national president and Secretary General, I will also like to add that the antimicrobials and the vaccines have been the triumph of the modern medicine. And any dilution with the modern medicine, the quality of the modern medicine in the form of the cross-pathy or the mixopathy shall definitely at the root cause of the AMR that we need to address whenever we fight against the AMR. Whatever you are doing is excellent work. This one point, very important point as a basic root cause should be added. I request our National President, Honorable Dr. Jayalal sir, for his guidelines at the end of this webinar. Dr. Jayalal sir. Okay. I request Secretary General Dr. Dele sir. JK, can you see Dr. Dele sir or Dr. Was he busy? Anyway, Dr. Sharad. Okay. JK, will you like to give some comments at the end of this webinar?
Yeah, as already discussed, it was a great insight that the real issues related to antimicrobial resistance has been discussed here by the one of the greatest expert available in the globe. So now the thing is that Indian Medical Association and the Hospital Board of India should work along with the government, states, and other organizations and hospitals to see that this message reaches each and every of the clinicians in the country, the hospital managements, etc. And another thing is that the hospital management should understand the both the financial and other advantages of forming such a antimicrobial policy and other guidelines, which will be also financially beneficial to them. By working together, we may be able to come out of this disaster situation. And this type of, as suggested by Dr. Menon, this type of education programs, state-wise, district-wise, and region-wise should continue. And we have to have more trainers, more of such programs so that this issue will be percolated into the masses.
Thank you, JK. So on behalf of Indian Medical Association Hospital Board, I thank Dr. Sanjeev Singh for his very elaborate address for entire fraternity. Friends, this today's webinar also is going to be there permanently on the YouTube channel, which we circulate all across the country. And I request all of you, those who missed this very important webinar today, should visit the channel and see this webinar. Also, I will percolate this specific webinar all across the country by tomorrow itself. So kind request or everyone go through this webinar again and again. Lastly, before signing off, I will also have a special request to Dr. Sanjeev Singh. We will not like to stop over here. This is one small attempt as far as awareness campaign against the AMR is there. The way you have presented how the dreadful situation can be in future in 2050, what you projected, we need to act very vehemently, very actively on this, proactively rather. And as Indian Medical Association and Hospital Board of India, we definitely are committed for any such cause where future is going to be affected for people of this country. And your participation and help in this regard to HBI and Indian Medical Association will be solicited. So I request you, whenever time is needed in any form, definitely we will like to conduct the awareness programs for our own doctors, our own professionals, our own hospital establishment owners across the country. And IMA and Hospital Board of India, they hold this is the sole representation and have the mass basis across the country. And that is the advantage. If at all we do this through the IMA, it is going to be a great help to the nation for the better cause. So once again, before signing off, I thank you, Dr. Sanjeev Singh, for your very great presentation, very helpful to all our healthcare establishments. Now, friends, HBI Online is a webinar series, national webinar series, and you all are aware that every week we come out with some practical, very important topic. Next Friday again, we will be there with very important practical topic. I request every one of you, kindly percolate the HBI channel, whatever webinars happening across the country to every member, every hospital. Join the movement of the Hospital Board of India with under the aegis of the IMA headquarters. I thank you, all of you, for joining over here. Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev Singh. Thank you, Dr. JK. Thank you all IMA leaders, our National President, our Secretary General. Till next Friday, 9 p.m. See you. Stay safe. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you.